Well, good evening once again, and we welcome you to this time of study around the Word of God, hosted by the Faith, Hope, and Love Center. Of course, if you have joined us before, I am Don Hamilton, the senior pastor of the Faith, Hope, and Love Center. And we have started a new series, a biblical guide to understand the nature and function of dreams. That is, a biblical guide to understand the nature and the function of dreams. So if you had tuned in last week, and of course you can go back online and see that first session, the introduction to this topic. And in the introduction to this topic, we actually covered 11 preliminary considerations about dreams, 11 preliminary considerations about dreams. And so today we want to begin section 1, but having covered these preliminary considerations in the introduction, we're now going to do section 1, and that is just a brief overview of the scientific view on dreams, the scientific view on dreams. And so in examining the scientific view on dreams, the first thing we speak about is the active brain, the active brain. You know, John Erickson says, the fact that you're asleep doesn't mean your brain stops working. The fact that you're asleep doesn't mean your brain stops working. So contrary to popular belief, sleep is not passive. And while it may seem uneventful to you, your brain is actually working pretty hard. So when we are in a state of sleep, it doesn't mean that the brain stops working. But you know, if you understand the body, there is the autonomic nervous system and the understanding of the central nervous system. When you speak of the autonomic, there are parts of our bodies that functions automatically, independent of our choice. For example, like the heart beats independently of us. And so the brain functions independent of choice. So when we were asleep, the brain is still at work. So we keep that in mind. The second thing we want to underscore is not just the active brain, but also the active mind. The active mind. And it is noted that dreams are like more than the continued functioning of the mind then during sleep. Sometimes rehearsing recent events, recent thoughts, sometimes creating scenarios based on our fears or hopes or desires. As such, dreams are a perfectly normal functioning of the brain. And of course, there's this debate between the mind and the brain. And some have argued is that the mind is the extension of the brain being the physical organ, and the mind then is the extension of the brain. And oftentimes, of course, when somebody says my mind was, and we point to our head, and really mind in itself, it is not necessarily physical, but it's an extension of the brain. So what we want to establish in terms of the scientific understanding, both the brain and the mind is active even during sleep. And so what science have done under laboratory conditions, they would have examined what happens to a person during sleep. And so it was discovered then that we go through stages of sleep. So we talk about the active brain, we talk about the active mind. Now we're going to talk about the stages of sleep. So under a control condition, it was in fact observed that we go through stages of sleep. And what is suggested is that there are 5 stages of sleep. 5 stages of sleep. Stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, stage 4, and then stage 5 is considered the REM sleep, which is rapid eye movement. Now, what have been done in examining people asleep under laboratory conditions, the brain seemed to emit frequency waves in terms of the level of our alertness. So you have the beta wave, and that is while we are reading normal waking state, the beta wave is measured. Then you have the alpha wave, and we are in alpha when we are listening to music or watching television, meditating, and this is considered to be the brain wave when we are in a state of resting, normal resting. And then the theta brain wave, at theta, we are in that kind of a pre-sleep, semi-awake state, and so the brain waves are measured in theta. And then, of course, there is delta. With delta, here is high quality regenerative sleep, or what we may call deep sleep. And it is suggested that it is in the state of delta we experience dreaming. And so the beta, the alpha, the theta, and the delta brain waves in terms of sleep. Now, when the concept of the 5 stages of sleep, it is suggested that we go through this cycle during our period of sleep, 90 minutes as it were, and every 90 minutes we go through the cycle of sleep, so that you have the first stage, the second stage, third stage, fourth stage, then REM, and then we go through that cycle for that entire period of sleep. And so the scientific understanding then is that when we are asleep, we go through 5 stages of sleep, and at the delta level, measured in terms of the brain waves, that is when we are in the state of deep sleep, where dreams actually occur. And these dreams could be lucid, or it could be very symbolic, and we'll talk about that in a while. Now, science also have attempted to respond to the question, what causes dreams? What causes dreams? And so we've talked about the mind that is awake, the brain that is awake, the stages of sleep, and now we took the scientific window in terms of the causes of dreams. So various theorists have put forward their own understanding as to what causes dreams. You don't necessarily have to agree. What we are doing is simply providing a brief overview as to what is understood in terms of the causes of dreams from the scientific standpoint. Sigmund Freud, you've probably heard about him, and some people say he's not relevant anymore in terms of the conversation of psychology, but Freud suggested that dreams are a disguised attempt at wish fulfillment. A disguised attempt at wish fulfillment. And so basically, when we are in that state of altered state of consciousness, Freud says deep-seated wishes are given a manifestation in dreams, so that dreams then disguises that deep-seated subconscious wish or desire that we have. Another theorist, Evans, suggested that dreams are really the mind's way of sifting all of the stuff that happened during your waking hours. So it's the sifting input. So what dreams allow us to do is to filter and go through the activities of your day. So Evans says it's the sifting input during the day, and once it's like a secretary who would take all of the filing materials, letters, correspondences, and so on, and then of course would file it in particular spaces and places. And so What Evans says is that dreams allow the sifting of all of that event that happened during the day so that it could be stored in places of the human memory. We can then go to another theorist, Hobson. Hobson says that dreams are basically visual imageries, resembles delirium actually, and he doesn't argue or forward any position that it is wish fulfillment or any attempt of sorting out what happened during the day. It is just something that happens during your sleep where you begin to get images, almost in a delirious kind of a state of being, and that is Hobson's contribution. We can then think of Cartwright, number 4, in terms of the causes of dreams. Cartwright suggested that when you think of dreaming is designed for problem solving. And so what would happen is that if you have an issue or concern that's on your mind when you go to sleep, dream in that altered state of consciousness allows us to go through the process of problem solving, and that is the function of dreams. And when we look then at the theories of dreams, you can then summarize and you say, okay, Freud view is it is wish fulfillment, and so what happens is that dreams, as one author put it, provide a kind of a psychic safety valve, so expressing sometimes the unacceptable feelings contained in your memory. Then, of course, you talk about the processing of information. So dreams help us to sort out what's happening during the course of our day. Some suggest that it's a purely physiological function where the regular brain stimulation in REM sleep may help us develop and preserve the neural pathways in the brain. Others suggest that it's an activation synthesis. REM sleep triggers neural activities that involves the random visual memories which our sleeping brain waves and turns it into stories and accounts. And then, of course, some suggest it's cognitive development that is taking place, where the content of dreams actually reflect the dreamer's cognitive development and their knowledge and understanding. Now, each one of these theories and views, there are critics of each one, so it has been subjected to critical consideration. But it's important to appreciate the scientific basis of understanding the causal factors of dreams. And by and large, we're saying that when we're asleep, your brain is still active, your mind is still active, and so as part of the altered state of consciousness in this dreamlike state, we go through stages of sleep, and it's at the deepest level of sleep dreams occur, and the various theories suggest why. Is it caused by some latent wish that you have on the inside that's manifested in the dream? Could it be that there were some problems that you were experiencing during the course of the day, and dreams allow you to sort out and find solutions? Is it that it's an opportunity for the mind to process all of the stuff that happened and to file it in memory? Is it just merely some physiological function where the regular brain stimulation occurs during the REM stage of sleep? Is it mere about cognitive development? And so you have all of these theories, and they are mentioned not to confuse us, but to suggest that the conversation about the brain and the mind and dreams and sleep, it is not as black and white as some people propose. Okay, so we have covered in this first section the scientific understanding of dreams. When we come back, we would want to explore somewhat the theology of dreams drawn from the Bible. What are some of the statements made in the Bible about dreams, so we could understand the scientific causality, but then we get to the biblical cause and understanding of dreams. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Of course, we are on this very important topic, a biblical guide for the understanding of the nature and function of dreams. And in the first session, we covered the whole preliminary questions. And then today, before we took our break, we were looking at some of the scientific consideration about dreams. We mentioned that the mind is still awake when you're asleep. The brain is still awake when you're asleep. We mentioned that we go through 5 stages of sleep. We mentioned under scientific laboratory conditions, the brain waves are measured in terms of what is actually happening. And it was noted in the deepest level of sleep, we experience dreaming. We also covered some of the popular theories of dreaming, whether it's Freud or Hobson or Evans, or those who hold to the view that it's a mere physiological activity that's happening. And so inside of all of these definitions and understanding, we gain a general and generic appreciation that there is some mind-brain interaction that takes place during our altered state of consciousness. And I'm using altered state of consciousness, I keep using this term, to simply suggest that we have what you may call the conscious state, where we are fully aware, where we could monitor and control our environment. And then you may have the subconscious level, where we are not consciously aware of monitoring and controlling our environment. So whenever we move out of our conscious state, it is called an altered state of consciousness. There is no new age injection of thought or idea there. It's just the expression to say we are no longer in the conscious awareness of monitoring and controlling our environment. We're in an altered state. So, for example, a person can take drugs and alter their state of consciousness. And these drugs are called psychoactive drugs because they act on the psychic and the mind. So if someone probably takes marijuana or cocaine or any of those drugs that alter your perception of reality, you can say that person is in an altered state of consciousness because they are no longer consciously able to monitor and control their environment. We now get to the theology of dreams in terms of what is mentioned within the context of the Bible on this matter of dreams. The first thing we need to do to clear at least the playing field somewhat is to speak to a comparison between dreams and visions. Dreams and visions, because you'll find those terms being used in the Bible. Now, the word dream actually comes from a Greek word ona, which means a vision in sleep, or sometimes it's called hopnos, which is what appears in sleep when you speak of dreams. So dreams, according to the biblical text, are visions of the night during sleep. That's how Job put it in Job chapter 33 and verse 15, and Isaiah 29 and verse 7, visions of the night during sleep. So Job in 33:14 says, "For God speaketh once, yet twice, yet man perceiveth it not. In a dream, in a vision of the night, when deep sleep falleth upon men, in slumbering upon the bed." And you do realize Job used the word deep sleep, which really science plays catch up, because the scientific brain waves observe that it is in deep sleep a person actually begins to dream. But when you get to vision, while dream is onar, vision is horama. And the whole matter of the horama, that which is seen, a spectacle, a sight, an appearance. And in Acts chapter 16 and verse 9, you would hear, "And a vision appeared to Paul in the night. There stood a man of Macedonia and prayed him, saying, Come over into Macedonia and help us." So the matter of dream is generally a more prolonged, altered state of consciousness, imagery or vision or story during deep sleep. A vision then, while similar to dream, can in fact occur while a person is awake, or it is of a shorter nature. So you can be in a state of sleep and you have this quick flash or picture or voice. And so the vision can occur during sleep, but more so a vision can occur while you are awake, where the conscious mind is suspended for a while and a flash is given, or a quick script passes over the mind and the mind captures it. And you can say, I saw a vision of this, or I saw a vision of that. Whereas dreaming is when you are in deep sleep, and a vision may not occur necessarily in deep sleep. And so you could quickly capture it, and it's more fast moving than the dream. So the difference between the dream and the vision, one author put it this way: the main difference between visions and dreams in the Bible is that dreams are received while the person is asleep, while visions are received generally when the person is awake. Although visions can occur in the nighttime. Let's Reason Ministry put it like this: what is the difference between dream and vision? Simply put, a dream is a story communicated in pictures that takes place when you are asleep. A vision is when you are awake and see reality, part and either watching or end up participating in it, as John did in the book of Revelation. So both can have similarities, though the vision oftentimes appear more symbolic. So there is that difference between dreams and visions. Then the second thing we need to do is do the comparison between dreams and trance. Dreams and trance. Again, remember we spoke about what the dream is, onar, a vision in sleep. And you can think of Isaiah 29 and verse 7, and it says, "And the multitude of all the nations that fight against Ariel, even all that fight against her and her munition, and that distresser shall be as a dream of a night vision." So dreams can occur, and dreams are called night visions. But when you speak of a trance, you can think of St. Peter, who in Acts chapter 10, he fell into a trance, and he became hungry in Acts 10:10 and was desiring to eat. But while they were making preparation, he fell into a trance. And the word trance really is ecstasis, or when we get ecstasy. Now, there are Christians who begin to feel very uncomfortable when we begin to use these language like dreams and visions and trance, because it is so generally associated with persons who might be in the occult. And I think to our disadvantage, those who are biblical based, to our disadvantage, we have unfortunately retreated from such a conversation, and we have allowed people who in fact have gone the occult way to define for us what these words should mean. And so trance in itself is not a bad word. In fact, when you read, as I said, Acts 10:10, it says, and he, Peter, became hungry and was desiring to eat, but while they were making preparation, he fell into ecstasy. I like how Vines gives us the appreciation of this word trance, ecstasy. He says it's a condition in which ordinary consciousness and the perception of natural circumstances were withheld, and the soul was susceptible only to the vision then imparted by God. Now, because we live in a psychedelic age, an age of spiritism, not only biblical persons will experience a trance. A person could experience a trance under demonic influence, and where the visions or apparitions that they experience comes from the demonic world. A person could experience a trance under or through the use of psychoactive drugs, where they can hallucinate and so on and so forth. People who are involved, particularly in this practice called channeling, where they believe that there are spirits in the universe called ascended masters, and these ascended masters would want to speak to humans, and so they go into this trance-like state, whether they want to invoke the so-called spirit of the dead or to hear wisdom from the spirits of the cosmos like Sept and Jonas and Lazarus. These are the names given to these spirits. And so what happens, the ordinary consciousness and the use of the mental faculties are actually surrendered, shut down and surrendered to the entities in the cosmos, and then they speak through. But keep this in mind, the concept of a trance is not a non-biblical one. You find it in Acts chapter 10 and verse 10, where Peter, he himself experienced a trance. But the difference here, his mind and what he saw was in fact brought into that level by God himself. It was God who showed Peter this particular vision within in the context of the trance. So then, McAllister says, when you begin to talk about a trance, the borderline between trance and dream is indefinite. So says McAllister. So the former occurs while, in a sense, while you're awake. That's a trance. And the latter takes place during the time of sleep, you see, during the time of sleep. And so the trance is when you're awake, and the dream, of course, is when you are asleep. If you check the biblical account again, particularly like Acts chapter 22 and verse 17, again we have the expression of ecstasy, or this matter of trance. And so in Acts 22 and verse 17 it says, and it came to pass that when I was come again to Jerusalem, even while I prayed in the temple, I was in a trance, and saw him saying unto me, make haste, get thee quickly out of Jerusalem, for they will not receive thy testimony concerning me. Here it is, the Apostle Paul in Acts chapter 22. He is recounting a trance he went into and the warning he got from God to get out of Jerusalem. And so we find then that God would use dreams, God used vision, and God also would use trance to speak to his servants as their conscious awareness and their conscious mind is suspended temporary, so God could speak to them. So you check again Acts 22 and verse 17, where Paul says, "And it came to pass that when I was come again to Jerusalem, even while I prayed in the temple, I was in a trance." So during prayer, someone could go into a trance-like state where their conscious mind is suspended so that God can speak to them either warnings, comforts, encouragement, exhortation, or rebuke. So in the trance-like state, Peter was rebuked by God for his own racial prejudice. And in a trance-like state, Paul was warned to get out of Jerusalem because there would have been a poor reception to the gospel message. We are talking about the whole idea of a theology of dreams and visions. So the difference between trance and vision, as we wrap up, I agree with Jameson Fawcett Brown, who says a trance differs from the vision of Cornelius insofar as the things seen had not the same objective reality, though both were supernatural. Both were supernatural. So there was not an objective reality within the mind of Peter. Peter actually got a vision of a sheet descending from heaven with all manner of beasts that was ceremoniously unclean. And all this occurred while he was in a trance. So we're so glad that you took the time to join us today, where we were examining in this section the scientific understanding of dreams, and then we brewed and we started our conversation on the theology of dreams by trying to define the difference between dreams and vision, dreams and trance, and so we could have an appreciation of how the Bible treats with it. And it's not a topic we should necessarily retreat from, because those who are in the occult or the psychedelic age, they are using it freely to do their channeling and to do their contacting with the spirit world. God uses dreams, God uses trance, God uses visions in communicating for his eternal purpose. God richly bless you, and thank you for joining us today in this time of study around the Word of God.